Evolution is a very common and controversial topic of debate between religious people and atheists. And it sucks because so many atheists cast doubts into people's minds. They say, oh, religion makes no sense, how can you believe in Adam and Eve? Oh, our ancestors are monkeys, blah blah blah, you know, that kind of stuff. And people actually start to disbelieve in religion just because they heard some scientific theory that kind of sounds like it goes against their religion. Well, in this video I hope to make it very clear what the actual logical explanation for Adam and Eve is, and also what religious people have to say about evolution. By the way, in this video I'll be speaking from the perspective of the Sunni school of thought in Islam, but of course this is generalizable to basically all of the Abrahamic religions and schools of thought. And I'll also mostly be piggybacking off of the work of Dr Shoaib Ahmed Malik, because he's written an entire book on this subject. Anyway, so evolution is essentially the gradual change or adaptation of a species to match their environment. And of course this happens over the course of millions of years, and it relies on three key assumptions. So the first one is deep time, or the idea that the earth has existed for like a very long time, like billions of years. And already this sounds like it has a conflict with religion, because the world was created in 6 days, right? Well, according to the Bible and the Torah, yes, but according to chapter 7, verse number 54 of the Holy Quran, Allah created the heavens and the earth in 6 ayamin, which yes, it can be translated to days, but the more accurate Old Arabic translation for it means something more like epochs. And yeah, this is compatible with science as shown by this diagram. Anyways, the next assumption is common ancestry, the idea that species that are similar in characteristics may have a common ancestor from like millions of years ago. And this is basically a proven fact at this point. You can look at genealogy, homology, paleontology, anatomy, and all of these things. And as far as I know, there's nothing in religious scripture that indicates that this is going against our religious beliefs. So yeah, we basically have no problem with common ancestry. Alright, so deep time is fine, common ancestry is fine, and now the mechanism. This is where there's a bunch of problems. Alright, so the mechanism is basically how the species goes from point A to point B. How a species goes from being one species to evolving into another species. And the most commonly agreed upon mechanism, as you probably know, is Neo-Darwinism. Darwinism being the theory of evolution by natural selection, and Neo-Darwinism being the theory of evolution by natural selection in which the biodiversity is caused by genetic mutations in the DNA. Completely random mutations. And there are basically three main reasons to oppose Neo-Darwinism. The first being that this theory is not actually accepted by all scientists, not even for religious reasons. In fact, the 5 main evolutionary biologists who oppose Neo-Darwinism are all atheists. And the second issue is not really an issue with the theory itself, it's more of an issue with the way it's presented. So this theory isn't known to scientists as being 100% true, right? This is why it's just a theory. But in school, the media, and basically everywhere else you go, this is portrayed as being 100% fact. You know, they say that this is as valid as the planetary model of the solar system, which it just isn't. And these two aren't reasons to completely discredit Neo-Darwinism. We can still think of it as a valid theory of evolution. But the last problem lies in the idea of random mutations in the DNA. So we are not allowed to believe that God would just leave the world to do its own thing, you know, to just evolve completely randomly without being involved. Because that's what deism is about, right? They believe that God just created the world and just let them do their own thing. You know, he's just sitting around watching TV, not doing anything, and somehow everything just created itself randomly. And yeah, we're not allowed to believe this because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Qayyum, the sustainer. And there are many quotes in the Quran that state that Allah is basically sustaining the world. He's keeping the lowest heaven from collapsing in on itself. He's holding the birds in the sky. You know, he's doing all of this stuff. He's sustaining the world actively. So he isn't just a deist God. That's not allowed. So yeah, this naturalistic and causeless view of randomness is not allowed in Islam. But we can still allow Neo-Darwinism to be a valid theory as long as we don't think of the random mutations as being completely random. Instead, we can interpret it in 2 different ways, either epistemic randomness or ontological randomness. So the first is perceived randomness. So it seems random, but it's not actually random. We just can't measure the variables, and we can't predict what the outcome is. So it's just like a coin toss, you know, if you flip a coin 100 times with the same exact force, same exact everything, you know, it's gonna end up the same way, right? So that's not completely random. And the latter, or ontological randomness, is basically just miraculous randomness, just stuff that happened because Allah decided it so. So basically just like the miraculous conception of Jesus in Mary's womb or anything else like that. It's just randomness that's decided by God. So yeah, based on the Quran and the Sunnah, believing in Neo-Darwinism isn't completely forbidden as long as you don't view the random mutations as being completely random, because that's un-Islamic and even a little bit unscientific, to be honest. So yeah, with evolution, no matter what the mechanism is, there is always the issue of Adam and Eve. Now this is where a lot of people like to go against Islam. You know, they say, oh, look at these fossil records of early humans. Oh, look, we share DNA with monkeys. Oh, look, we have Neanderthal and Denisovan genes, blah blah blah, you know, all of that dumb stuff. And yeah, at face value, these do seem like valid arguments against Adam and Eve. And these arguments probably did create a lot of apostasy. apostates, but there are actually two logical ways to look at Adam and Eve. And these are what Dr. Malik calls human exceptionalism and Adamic exceptionalism. So the first is human exceptionalism, and this is basically the idea that every single species that has ever existed evolved except for humans, and that's where the name comes from. So basically everything just evolved the way it's supposed to, right? But as soon as evolution expected Homo sapiens and it expected Adam and Eve, Allah just created them miraculously, because Allah can, you know, if Allah exists, he can do what he wants, therefore he can spawn Adam and Eve in because he can, right? And then from Adam and Eve came the entire human race. And this does raise the question of genetic bottlenecking. You know, there was no biodiversity there. It was just Adam and Eve, you know, and according to Google, you need 100 people to be able to repopulate the entire earth. Otherwise, there will be, you know, all sorts of different genetic mutations, issues, and you'll get that big jaw thing and all of that. And yeah, that is a fair point, but remember, there is still a very, very small chance of genetic bottlenecking not happening, because they could just probabilistically avoid all of the bad alleles. And because there's a very, very small chance, all it takes is some ontological randomness, or randomness caused by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then this is avoided. And remember, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all powerful, he can do this if he would want to. Anyways, the second way of looking at it is Adamic exceptionalism, which means that again, every single species that has ever existed evolved, with the exception of Adam and Eve. The main difference being that Adam could have been born at any time. He could have even been a pre-Homo sapien species. Adamic exceptionalism also implies that there could have been other humans living at the same time as Adam and Eve. And all of the other humans were products of evolution, with the only exceptions being Adam and Eve. And there's not really any scripture that denies this as far as we know, you know? There's no actual confirmed date when Adam was born. For all we know, Adam could have just been a Homo sapien living among all of the other Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, and Denisovans. And this does solve the issue of genetic bottlenecking, because it's not just Adam and Eve that created the world, it's Adam and Eve and all of the other Homo sapiens, and all the other Neanderthals, and all of the other Denisovans, and whatever. They all created the human race together. Both human and Adamic exceptionalism explain the fact that we all have trace amounts of Denisovan and Neanderthal genes in us. Because Homo sapiens could interbreed with the Neanderthals and the Denisovans, and there is nothing in scripture that goes against this being the truth. So yeah, we don't doubt the existence of Neanderthals and Denisovans and all of the other pre-Homo sapiens. Okay, so that's evolution and Adam and Eve explained. Now there's just one more thing that I would like to go over, and that's intelligent design. A lot of people look at complex things in biology and physics, particularly the things that we can't understand yet. They say, look, this is proof that God exists. There's no scientific explanation for this. And while yeah, it might be really cool, and yeah, it might increase your iman, and the Quran even tells us that nature is an ayat in many places, we should not rest our faith on intelligent design. Because as soon as science explains what was previously unexplainable, your faith might just crumble. Another reason not to rest your faith on intelligent design is because ID itself rests on the back of contingency. The idea that everything that exists must either be necessary or contingent. And because the universe exists, God must exist. But the thing is, the contingency argument can be applied to any universe, even one where it's just chaos and it's just particles floating around randomly, you know? You can apply the contingency argument to anything, even if it has no purpose or design. And I mention intelligent design because people look at complex things like the eye, the flagellum, or the sun and the moon, and they say, look, this stuff, this is not explained by science, then God must have done it, right? Because this stuff just can't naturally select itself into existence. And while yeah, that is true, and it is a great point, one day an evolutionary biologist or a physicist might give you a complete scientific breakdown of why these things happen, and then you'll just be left there feeling stupid. Anyways, that was my take on evolution in Islam. If you liked the video, please let me know in the comments, or comment basically any suggestions you might have for videos or whatever. Also consider becoming a member by clicking the join button here, and you'll gain access to the members only Discord server. And with that said, may Allah bless you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.